Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton here with Brandon. The first round of the Weiss Schwarz Invitationals officially in the books. 16 games down, 16 winners, 16 losers. We're going to talk about day 7 right now. First game up, Connor playing Love Live Sunshine taking on Michael, who's kind of a different sword art list, based around all the heal loop pieces at levels 2 and 3. Michael had an opportunity to lock Connor at level 0 early in the game, but decided to push, and in doing so triggered a lot of his climaxes. Michael was able to hold board, but Connor triple canceled, and Michael just kept eating on the return. Never really found his standby pieces, didn't trigger a standby until the last turn of the game. Still almost won despite all of that, but his compression wasn't very good, and Connor was able to stick him for game despite not having his U finisher on board.
Game 2, Michael kept pushing Connor up a level. When Connor hit level 2, he got the Chica and the U on field, and they stayed on the field for the rest of the game. Michael not able to respond to that, and essentially lost the game because Connor didn't need to spend the extra resources to keep his cards alive on field.
You and I, we've talked about this before. Playing standby is a lot like trying to walk a Great Dane. There's a lot of power there, but it can be so hard to control what your deck does. And I think that Michael's list is really interesting. I think Sword Art is a really good set for standby, and I think it has a lot of really interesting heal pieces. I think it's a really interesting list. I would like to have seen how well he would have done if his list had cooperated, but he didn't really get some of the help that he needed. Again, standby being what it is. Yeah, standby is a little bit more varied, a little harder to control, and unfortunately the deck just didn't do what Michael wanted it to do. So he will move on to the Elimination Bracket, Connor moving on to round 2. Moving on to game number 2, another Love Live deck, this one piloted by Carmen, taking on Brandon and his KonoSuba list.
This game was not streamed, but I was able to reach out to both Carmen and Brandon, and they kind of relayed to us what was going on in the games. With game 1, Carmen got locked out of yellow at level 1, and that really kind of affected his gameplay. He wasn't able to mill nor brainstorm, and keep in mind this was the most normal game according to them that they played, and because of that he wasn't able to. He just wasn't able to get the pieces parts that he needed to, and because of that, he wasn't able to mill out his deck even. Like, it forced him to take additional damage that he would not have if he had been able to mill those cards out and compress his deck more. So Carmen ended up losing that one. Also helped that Brandon was able to double Megamine Clock Kick to seal the game. Game 2 was probably over in about 10 minutes. It did not go well for Brandon, because Carmen was able to get a level's worth of damage onto him, and especially when he was expecting to be able to triple cancel. Climaxes beyond the bottom were what they were. Taking more damage than able to compensate from. Game 3, very much in a similar thing, but opposite. Carmen, towards the end of his deck, triggers his last 2 climaxes, leaving 6 clean damage for Brandon. So Brandon overtakes Carmen 2-1.
This is one of my favorite matchups in the current meta, honestly. 2 of the best finishers in the English game. Also 2 of the best hats in the English game. So it's a shame that this one wasn't streamed. I'm hoping that we can see this matchup again later on as the tournament progresses. But third game of the day, one of the wildest matchups that we saw all week. Broderick playing the Goblin Slayer Priestess build, and Ian his Attack on Titan list. Ian obviously comes into this one as a pretty heavy favorite. Goblin Slayer's been struggling all week. Broderick takes game 1. Ian pushed Broderick to level 2. Broderick responds by hitting 4 on his brainstorms and then triple canceling. His climaxes were exactly where he needed them. He was able to push Ian. Ian was able to get 2 Mikasas on the board, but he couldn't close out the game, and Broderick took game 1. Game 2 really looked like it was going to be much of the same. Ian passed turn at 05 to Broderick, thinking he would lock him at level 0, but Broderick had the Ricky in hand. Broderick then almost locked Ian at level 1, but he swung into an open lane and hit him for 3, so he pushed him to level 1. Despite all that, Ian couldn't get his Aaron combo. He never got that together, and on the Burn 1 stream, I don't remember, it was Dean who said that AOT is really, really dependent on its level 1 combo, and that's really true. And if it doesn't get its combo, it can get into trouble fast. So Ian wasn't able to get the resources off of his combo. Broderick was able to tri-field his priestesses at level 2, passed to Ian, who was still stuck at level 1. Ian's only out would be wind triggers, and he double wind triggers. Cleared the priestesses off the board, and Broderick ended up scooping next turn. Only possible out for Ian was finding those wind triggers. He found 2 of them and was able to salvage game 2. Game 3, Ian almost took a game loss right off the bat.
Because he didn't have yellow in his clock. He wasn't able to play the omnidirectional gear that he was trying to play.
Yeah, the game state was not considered irreparable, so they were able to reset. And Ian made the most of his opportunity. Despite the fact that Broderick, again, filled his board with priestesses, Ian was actually able to power through the priestesses, clear them off the board. Broderick wasn't able to finish, which is kind of Goblin Slayer's biggest weakness, is that it doesn't really have that strong finish game. Ian was able to close on his next turn, take game 3, and survive into round 2. So really, really interesting matchup. Broderick definitely had the underpowered deck in the matchup, played it really, really well, and you could definitely make the argument that he deserved better. Almost took it on a couple of different occasions, played it really well. Ultimately, AOT does just enough and advances into the second round. So let's have a look at the bracket. Round 1 is in the books, and we now have the elimination bracket as well. First, in the winner's bracket, couple of trends. KonoSuba goes 4-0 in round 1. AOT goes 3-0 in round 1. So the 2 decks that we consider to be top of the meta, doing what they're supposed to do in round 1, continuing to advance. We will have a KonoSuba mirror match between Cohen and Kit in round 2, as well as a couple of different AOT versus Love Live matchups. Also, Ryan and Clinton will be playing a KonoSuba AOT match, so potentially a preview of what the final could look like. 2 of the best players, 2 of the best decks. Should be a lot of fun to see how that one goes. What are some matchups that you're looking at, Brandon, in this second round?
A couple of the matches that I'm looking at are some of the more outlier decks, the decks that only one of came into the tournament and were able to keep going forward. Namely, I'm looking at decks like Cardcaptor.
I think Davida, I think Davita's been putting the whole meta on notice for a pretty long time with Cardcaptor. Winning Rome, topping Worlds, and now advancing in this tournament as well. I think that we really need to start thinking about talking more about Cardcaptor and its capacity to compete in this current meta, especially given all the tools that it has to deal with some of the new stuff. That's a whole conversation, but Cardcaptor is starting to turn some more heads. It'll be interesting to see how it continues to do in this tournament, and how that shakes up the way we talk about the meta going forward.
Also interested to see this the mirror match that's not a mirror match with SAO. Seeing Alicization versus one of the more traditional SAO builds.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Riaz, obviously reigning world champion, the only person to run Alicization in this tournament. So not exactly a mirror match, but it should be an interesting game. Moving into the elimination bracket, what are some of the things that you're seeing here?
It gives Goblin Slayer another opportunity because there are 4 decks, and there has to be a Goblin Slayer winner versus with Jack and Coco and Vince. So Goblin Slayer will advance in the elimination bracket, at least one.
Yeah, Goblin Slayer 0-4 in the first round. Really rough showing for a deck that was really well represented. I'm curious to see how Lamb and his Fujimi deck does. Lamb, the only representative of a deck that a lot of people were really excited about when it first dropped. One that you and I certainly thought could shake up the meta, but kind of a disappointing outing in round 1. It'll be interesting to see how he does against ReZero in the elimination bracket. Round 2 will include the elimination bracket. If you lose in this bracket, you are out of the tournament. So both the first round in the elimination bracket and the second round in the main bracket will start Monday, and all of that should get started with the weekly recap stream over on Twitch, the Weiss Invitationals Twitch channel, link in the description. That I believe is going to be at 4 o'clock Eastern. Check the description for any updated time on that. Get a fuller breakdown of everything that happened in round 1 and a look ahead at round 2. Some housekeeping notes on our front. We're not doing any deck techs for now. This is kind of a big project that we've taken on, so we're going to continue to hold off on putting out any deck tech or gameplay videos for a little bit while we continue to work on this. This has been a lot of fun, and it's been a really rewarding project, so we want to make sure that we're doing this as best we can. Also want to give a quick shout out to everyone who's been watching and following along, and all of our new subscribers. I mean, our subscriber count is more than doubled since this tournament started, and it feels really nice to be able to make something that people are caring about and that is of benefit to this community. We have felt really welcomed. I think I can speak for both of us. The feedback has been really positive. We really appreciate some of these players and channels that we hold in high regard reaching out to us with comments and feedback and very kind words. So really appreciate that. Also, personally, I want to shout out Brandon, who over the last few days in particular has really been carrying the load on this, really helping me get a lot of the editing done. I had to have surgery on Thursday, so I've kind of been limited in action the last couple of days, so I really appreciate you, Brandon, helping pick up some of what I couldn't handle over the last few days. Makes my life a lot easier. Really appreciate you helping me out with the editing stuff.
Well, we're here to give that recap for the community, so we're just excited about this tournament, and we're excited to see how this will continue to play out.
I'm expecting there to be at least one game tomorrow. I'm expecting the Goblin Slayer match between Jack and Coco and Vince to be held tomorrow. But watch the Twitch stream with Ian to get the latest updates and a more full recap of round 1. I'm really excited about round 2, and we hope that you are too. Join us again tomorrow. Until then, have a good one.
We'll see you then.